Oregon 32, Ohio State 31. Tyler, I'll kick it to you right off the bat. What is kind of your headline, your lead for this game?
I'd love to see it at least one more time, maybe two. That'd be great. It was, in my opinion, the game of the year. SEC fans may argue with that, with the Bama Georgia game, but this was just from the start to finish, just haymaker after haymaker, back and forth they went. And even on that first drive too, I mean, Oregon, stood up to Ohio State, got that interception that wasn't reviewed for some reason. That was a very iffy call. And Ohio State goes down and scores. But in the end, it doesn't matter because Oregon just kind of, was able to hold on to the very end, unlike some teams have been able to do against Ohio State in the past, notably my Notre Dame Fighting Irish last year when they just, couldn't hold on within the last 3 seconds. So I'm probably skipping ahead of the end of the game, but I'm almost wondering too if Dan Lanning, with 10 seconds to go, if he almost put 12 guys on the field on purpose, because at that time is not like time is the factor right there. You don't care about the yardage. If you put 15 guys out there to stop a play, again, he had 6 seconds left after that. So, it's only a 5-yard penalty. It's kind of like, at the end of a first half where guys go deep or something, just tackle the receiver. I mean, if it's 7 seconds left, then it goes down to 2.
Yeah.
Not a big deal. So I'm almost wondering, I mean, I know Buddy Ryan did that way back in the day in the NFL a couple times. And, Belichick's been known to kind of do some stuff like that and kind of play cat and mouse with coaches and everything. So I kind of wonder if Lanning had that up his sleeve or if, Tosh Lupo even had that up his sleeve at all. I don't know.
Well, that was out of a timeout too, was it not?
Gosh, I can't remember. It was the ending was just such a blur.
I think it was out of a timeout, and the broadcast crew mentioned right before that snap, there's confusion on defense, kind of alluding to, I think there's too many men on the field. Certainly an interesting tact because Ohio State's out of timeouts, or I guess they have one timeout.
One left, yeah.
Right. Ryan Day is going to take that timeout to his grave. One timeout. They had wasted so much time getting to the line, getting plays off. You have the offensive pass interference, which really threw a wrench into the works for Ohio State. Before that penalty on Jeremiah Smith, it looked like Ohio State was going to cruise into field goal range. Now, #college kickers, nothing is given anytime you send the special teams unit out there in college football. We know this. But at the same time, it just felt like, oh gosh, I think Oregon's played themselves one too many times. They left too much time on the clock. And I was already writing Dan Lanning's obituary. I had a graphic ready to go for Ohio State as the victor, thinking, here's another time where Dan Lanning chases some points early. They have missed opportunities and they come up short. Really, though, I think the story for this game is, you know what? Oregon stood up to the test. They overcame a ton of mistakes, and we can talk through some of those mistakes, but they overcame those mistakes, and they didn't let Ohio State play bully ball, which, in my prep for the preview show before I was out with a fever, I was getting ready to say, I don't know if Oregon's going to be able to play ball in the trenches, but Garrett, they really did. They looked good doing it too.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that we highlighted in the preview show was that when you looked at this rushing game, when you looked at what they were going to have to do to be physical up front, we thought that was going to be a lot of the difference, right? We thought the quarterbacks are going to be pretty evenly matched. It turns out that was pretty true. They both, go for 326 and 341, pretty even, both 2 touchdowns. But we looked at that rush game and said, whoever has more success here probably ends up taking the game by just the slightest of margins. And turns out that was right. Jordan James wins the rushing attack over Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins. By the way, not what I expected because I thought the other 2 guys being fresher were going to have a lot more of an impact than it did. Quinshon did not have a very good game. But yeah, Jordan James, I mean, what a game. 23 carries, 115 yards, a touchdown. Almost, I thought at the very end we were going to be talking about, him not being able to punch it in on that last drive as the difference in this when Ohio State gets down and kicks the field goal. But yeah, I mean, end of the day, it was just the smallest possible margin here. Maybe home field helped a little bit, right? That might have gotten him that extra point somewhere. And then, at the end of the day, this just came down to the rush game. I think winning it out for Oregon over the course of the game, it overcame the point chasing. It overcame the mistakes early on. But at the end of the day, if you can dominate, in the trenches at any small level, right? If you can just find the ways to win the little battles throughout the course of the game, those will add up. And I think that's what ended up making the difference on that last drive.
Tyler, for those point chasing opportunities where, again, it felt like, oh my gosh, Dan Lanning's going to lose another high profile game, chasing points way too early. Hindsight 2020, do you still see that as an issue for Dan Lanning going forward? Or is it something that you think is going to just be a part of the equation for Oregon and maybe even make them all the more dangerous going forward?
Yeah, it's definitely the latter. I mean, that's just his MO, and he did it last year against Washington multiple times, and it bit him in those games. I know he went forward on fourth down. I believe it was in the third quarter, and drew up a beautiful play, hit the tight end in the flat, kind of, ran for 20, 25 yards there. But when it works, it's great, right? And when it doesn't, then he takes the heat, and obviously he did that last year. So happy for Dan Lanning, to get kind of that monkey off his back. It's kind of his first really big win of his coaching career. You turn the tables to Ryan Day, and he's won some big games, but you just got to question him. And really in college football in general, you got to question coaches all the time and their decision making and their clock management. But I think, with Lanning, it's going to be part of the equation.
So with this loss for Ohio State, I came in thinking Ohio State is certainly the more composed team. I thought they had been the more consistent team on both sides of the ball. Oregon had the sizzle. They had potential to ignite an explosive offense, and we saw that a little bit today. Evan Stewart gets going. Tez Johnson has some big plays. We talked about Jordan James. Which side do you come out taking more away from? Do you see Oregon as, hey, they've hit this next level as a championship contender, or are you kind of going back to the well of, man, if not now, then when for Ohio State?
I think I came away more impressed with Oregon than disappointed in Ohio State. But look, Ohio State didn't play a perfect game by any means, right? And I was saying it in the chat, but I think that last play is going to get way too much criticism. Will Howard played a good game. He made a mistake. I'm sure he wants to have that one back. I'm sure he knows in every other situation, if you were to slow it down and put him in the film room, he knows exactly what decision he needs to make there to let his team win, right? And he's going to get too much hate. Armchair quarterbacks on Monday are going to be ruthless, but it is what it is, right? But no, I came away a lot more impressed with what Oregon was able to do, because going into this game, I really didn't know how good they were, right? They kind of kept it close with Boise, and they hadn't really done a whole lot to impress me so far, but being able to go toe-to-toe with who I think is still a very good, probably top 2 or 3 team in the nation in Ohio State. Obviously they'll drop, but I think that's still a good team. They stood up with them and went 4 quarters with them and found a way to get out with a win. Yes, they were at home. Yes, there's going to be little things that you are going to say, well, on a neutral site, does Ohio State win this game? Well, if, that last mistake doesn't get made, well, if they don't throw the flag, which it was OPI, but if they don't throw the flag, whatever. I just came away a lot more impressed with what Oregon was able to do, as opposed to just upset with saying, Ohio State, you blew it, you didn't get there. This is still wide open. And, like our friends over at Walk on Redshirt said, a couple minutes before the show started, they can still lose another game and still be fine and make the playoff. And so this is why I like this new format so much, is because, you get to say, hey, you made a mistake. You didn't come out on top for this one, but your season isn't over. And, hopefully, like you were saying off the top side, we get to see this one another couple of times, because this was what college football is supposed to be. And I hope that we get to see this rematch at some point.
It's ironic. I changed my prediction for this game. Garrett, we talked about it on Monday when we were breaking down the playoff bracket at the halfway point. I said that Ohio State was going to win this game, but in the preseason, I had picked them to drop this game, run the table, get revenge on the Ducks in Indianapolis. Shouldn't have backed off that take. Evidently, I had it pegged right the first time.
Stay the course, Mitch.
Evidently, trust the gut, not my eyes. For Oregon, though, their remaining schedule, guys: Purdue, Illinois, at Michigan, Maryland, at Wisconsin, home against Washington. There's not a team on that schedule that scares me, to be quite honest. I guess maybe going to the Big House, but I think Texas showed you the blueprint to beat the Wolverines in their house. So, Tyler, I mean, is there a natural landmine where Oregon stubs their toe, or is this kind of full steam ahead into Indianapolis?
No, I'm with you. I mean, preseason, I picked Oregon to go 12-0. They were the only team I picked to go undefeated in the country. And again, I picked Ohio State to get revenge in the Big Ten championship. And again, like an idiot this morning, I bet, Ohio State minus 2.5. So that schedule, again, Michigan is the toughest remaining game. And I don't know if anybody really thinks Michigan's, that serious of a team this year. We'll see what Tuttle does next week. But I just think that the changes that Oregon has made, the change they made after week 2 on the offensive line, moving the center to the right guard and the right guard to the center. And I mean, that offensive line, they didn't allow Ohio State to get any pressure with 4 rushers tonight. They didn't allow any sacks. When Gabriel has time, he can launch those deep balls and be pretty accurate with them, which has been kind of his hiccup this year. And he can hit the crossing routes. We know that he's a very accurate quarterback. And so I think with their remaining schedule, if they do not end up with a spot in Lucas Oil, it'll be surprising. And I think with both these teams, it'll be surprising if we don't see both of them in the playoff.
That's where I am too. I mean, gosh, Will Howard, man, you guys said it. The last play, really the last drive, I felt like he fell asleep at the wheel a little bit. The moment was a little too big for him. But the rest of the game, 28 of 35, 326, 2 touchdowns, does not throw a pick. Dylan Gabriel, 23 of 34, 341, 2 touchdowns, averaged 10 yards a pass. And to your point, Tyler, the offensive line allowed him enough time to, what the broadcast pointed out, navigate that pocket, be comfortable in a mobile capacity to not only use his legs, but also position himself to throw the ball down the field. Evan Stewart catch a 69, Tez Johnson catch a 48, Terrence Ferguson catch a 32, Trayshawn Holden, before he got kicked out for spitting on a DB, catch a 32. So you're right. I mean, the offensive line clearly is headed in this right direction. And now that they've got the running game going along with it, the defense stepped up. They did not allow Ohio State to dominate on the ground, which was a concern of mine in the weeks leading up. I mean, it felt like the Ducks put it all together for one perfect weekend under the lights in Autzen Stadium. Now, we know college football is a fickle beast, and it doesn't matter if you're favored by 1 or favored by 100. Any given Saturday, you can line up and lose one. So now that Dan Lanning and the Ducks have a taste of success, have that big win in the regular season, I'm curious to see, do you continue to put it together? How do you handle being at the top? Because, guys, for me, Oregon's going to move up to 2. They're going to be behind Texas until Texas loses, if that happens. I just think with the remaining schedule for Oregon, the remaining schedule for Texas, I think there's enough juice behind the Longhorns to where they're going to stay on number 1 until they lose that, right? But for me, I think Oregon is that next team that I'd pick that I'd feel really good about winning a national championship. Maybe Ohio State slid down to number 3. How would you guys order your top 3 national championship favorites at this point?
Maybe I'm wrong for this. I still like the Buckeyes. That was kind of my preseason pick, and I'm still in on the Buckeyes to go and take this out. So I think they're the best team right now. I think they're the most complete team, and I think this is one of those like moments where they get to say, you know what, this is bad. We made our mistakes. Let's get super motivated, right? Let's go take that bad taste in our mouth. Want to take it to them back at the end of the season when we play them in the Big Ten championship, and we'll go, put it to them there. And then at that point, you get to go get whatever your seed is and rock and roll in the playoff. And I think that this is as good a chance as they're going to have. It's as good of a roster, I think, as they've had in a little while. They're, super talented. And if they can't get it done this year, that's one of those, if not now, win situations for Ohio State, at least in my opinion. So I still like the Buckeyes most right now. I understand they just lost, and probably we got Oregon fans watching this. They're what do you mean they just I'm not claiming I'm Josh Payton, just saying that I'm going to ignore results on the field. I just think that it's a tough road game and you lost by 1. I'm going to give you a little bit of slack for that. I also have seen, and this might be I don't have the final number on that after today, but teams that cross the country in the Big Ten won like one game going into today.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who's playing or how they look. You don't win when you cross the country from the Midwest to the other side of Big Ten country over there on the West Coast. So it just isn't something that happens a lot. I know there's a couple road wins today on that, but I think this is a very good Ohio State team. I'd probably put them at 1, and Texas and Oregon probably right behind them. But for me, it almost feels like a 1A, 1B, 1C because they're all just kind of the cream of the crop. And then after that, I don't really know what there is left in college football.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with you on that. They're kind of all that's the top tier right now in college football. What I will say, and people will laugh at me, in 6 days from now, Oregon will make the cross country trek to West Lafayette, Indiana. Yeah. They're going to play a Purdue team that turned it on in the second half today against Illinois, and they've been known to be giant killers before. I know they've taken their licks so far this season, but as we've seen with Alabama and with Notre Dame, you get up for a big win. It is really hard to bring yourself back up to that level, especially when you're going on the road. And they're probably going to be, 28, 30-point favorites at least in that game.
So, wait, I want to flesh this out a little bit. You're telling me that a team that just lost in overtime, that wears black and gold and is traditionally a perennial bottom feeder of their conference, is playing a team coming off of a massive win that was televised to the nation like that? I've seen crazier things before. We're about to see a field storming in West Lafayette, I guess.
I'm just saying, watch out.
I'm liking this.
Ryan Brown had himself a day, true freshman, I believe, for Purdue, 297 yards, 3 touchdowns. Guys, they should have won that game against Illinois. Not only did Illinois blow that lead, but going for 2 was what cost the Boilermakers that game. They had the running back wide open in the flat. I mean, they motioned him out. They got exactly what they wanted. They ran a little rub route. They got what they wanted. They didn't throw the ball to him. Mm-hmm. I like that. We'll see how much juice Oregon takes cross country next week.
Gracious, how